Meyer, Trent Baalke, and the Jags are doing so far in the early stages of free agency.
Yeah, I do. You could see certainly like the vision of what Coach Meyer wants in terms of speed with Philip Dorsett. Carlos Hyde was some familiarity. Candidly, maybe the one move that I was a little surprised, and some other people around the league, was franchising Cam Robinson. Not sure I saw him as that type of player, but look, he's young and maybe he gets better, and certainly protecting Trevor Lawrence is going to be job one.
Mike, a big talking point in free agency this year for the Jaguars was the tight end position. You're bringing in Trevor Lawrence, hopefully, we'll see, but I mean, it's Trevor Lawrence. You're bringing in Trevor Lawrence, and in my opinion, you have to give him as many weapons as possible. The tight end position here for the past decade has been lacking, to say the very least. Should Jaguars fans be worried right now about the tight end position, or is it so overblown because you have guys like Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, who are those diamonds in the rough, the other difference makers? Like, should Jacksonville still pursue a guy like Gerald Everett or somebody like that to help out Trevor Lawrence, or will they be okay relying on maybe some non-household names like Josh Oliver and maybe some guy in the draft?
Yeah, O'Shaughnessy is a free agent, and look, I actually liked Oliver last year coming out quite a bit. I thought he had a lot of athleticism from San Jose State, and I think he still has big upside. And you could manufacture those guys. I remember when I worked with Rex Ryan, he always used to talking about, hey, let's take those athletic tackles. We can make them our jumbo tight end. And there's some guys you can certainly get creative. You can look at players like Kyle Jerzelik, who just re-signed with San Francisco. He's a little bit more of a fullback, but you can move guys around and get production there. I do think the tight end's a really important position as the development for a quarterback. So I think it's a really good point. But look, free agency officially doesn't start till tomorrow.
That's a good point. Hey, not around. You haven't been on Jags Twitter today as much as we have. We thought we'd be doing this whole session on the couch, Mike, today, but then some big signings like Shaquille Griffin, and now the trade for Malcolm Brown and Marvin Jones signed. I think Jags fans are starting to feel a little bit better. Mike Tannenbaum with us here on Action Sports Jax on ESPN 690. We appreciate the time, and it's a perfect time for you to jump in on this conversation. The Jags didn't go make a huge splash yesterday. Did that surprise you at all? Not chasing maybe a big-time wide receiver or outbidding some teams for those tight ends like Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith?
Well, I would just say, to me, that's complementary team building. When you look at the receiver position, it's loaded in the draft. You're going to be able to draft one or two receivers. I think Laviska Shenault, a little bit of a guy that's a versatile player, but last year's second-round pick, I think, has a chance to really develop into a playmaker. And then you can certainly add guys. You could look at a guy like Kenny Golladay. I'm not saying they're going to sign him, but there's a number of good receivers still out there. We saw a couple go early. Kendrick Bourne was a surprise. Aguilar, I thought, got a little bit more than I expected. Plenty of receivers out there. So, again, I think when you look at guys like Dorsett, one of the things that when you look at Coach Meyer, going back to Utah, Florida, obviously at Ohio State, he wants speed on the perimeter.
Mike, you're a guy coming from New York, and you actually spent some time with defensive coordinator Bob Sutton. Now, I played under Bob Sutton back in 2013 in Kansas City. Now, obviously, Bob Sutton is a senior defensive analyst here in Jacksonville. When I think of a Bob Sutton defense, I think about obviously having that beef in the middle, but it really features two bona fide pass rushers on the edge. And we had Tamba Ali and we had Justin Houston, two, Pro Bowlers, all pro type of guys. And keep in mind, we don't know what the defense is going to look like quite yet, but let's assume right now, just for the narrative, that Bob Sutton is going to implement a lot of what he had in New York or in Kansas City. With what you see right now from Josh Allen, you got to like that. From K'Lavon Chaison's perspective, though, are you sold on K'Lavon Chaisson being that other guy, or is edge rush still a position that Jaguars should either, get in early in the draft or still in free agency?
Yeah, and look, I know Coach Sutton well. But, when you also look at, Joe Cullen as the new defensive coordinator, one of the things when you look at the system he just came from, guys like Matt Judon really they thrived, and Judon's not just a, quote-unquote pass rusher. So I think with Josh Allen and Chaisson, they're both young, they're both athletic. Josh Allen was a guy I loved coming out. I thought the Giants should have taken him at 5 overall when he came out. He was one of my favorite players of the draft. So I think their versatility, their athleticism, you can never have enough pass rushers. But then you think about guys like Miles Jack. He could really run. So I think there's a lot of speed in their front seven, which, again, when you look at what Joe Cullen came from, I think that's going to be speed will be at a premium, especially in the front seven.
Mike Tannenbaum with us, Action Sports Shacks on ESPN 690. You've been in so many different situations, Mike. What's your view of this situation? Urban Meyer, Shad Khan has made him the coach-centric figure of this organization. I kind of like that. But when it comes to days like this in the upcoming draft, how much is divided between Urban Meyer really pulling the trigger on these moves or Trent Baalke really guiding him to the right moves? How do you view the situation inside Jags headquarters these days?
Well, I would just say, that's in the formative years of my career, that's the system I grew up in. Coach Parcells, Coach Belichick. I thought there was a lot of efficiencies with that, to be candid, just from a standpoint of everybody knew what to look for, and Coach Meyer is making all the decisions. And with Trent Baalke and role I played for a long time in my career is you're the point guard of information. You guys talk about players like, be it Malcolm Brown or Philip Dorsett or, some of the other moves that they recently made. Should we franchise Cam Robinson? You want to lay out hey, if we let Cam Robinson graduate to free agency, here are our options. Do we want to go after Trent Williams? He's going to be expensive. Here are the other tackles in the draft. If we draft a tackle, we can't get the tight end. So do we pay Cam and then we can go draft that tight end? Those are sort of the things you want to set the table, put all the information out there, and then work hard to make the best decision for us. And I've always defined the job as being the point guard of information.
Mike, when you look at this Jaguars roster from last year, it was the youngest team in the NFL. They're obviously now stocking up on veteran presence, and they've got significantly older. I know from a player's perspective of what it meant to have, that veteran leadership in the locker room to try to trickle down a little bit, especially from a team coming off of one win. From a former GM's perspective, is that something that gets talked about a lot, is bringing some veteran guys in there to help mold these younger guys essentially?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that. I'm not a big 3-year rebuild guy. And the reason for that is my first year with the New York Jets in 1997, we won 9 games. The year before, they won 1. So coaching matters, culture matters, player accountability, it all matters. And I think you could turn things around a lot quicker in our sport because things like special teams and field position and playing great situational football really impacts the game.
Mike Tannenbaum with us, Action Sports Shacks on ESPN 690. Mike, I do have to thank you because last year during ESPN's mock draft, I picked, and I had to pick who I thought the Jags would take, and I said Javon Kinlaw. And I'm pretty sure that you picked right after me because I think you were picking for the Jets, if I have it correct. And you applauded my move of Kinlaw. So it did a lot for my ego, so I have to thank you for that.
Now, Brent, tell him your second pick of that draft. Brent, tell him your second pick of the draft.
Wait, let him talk about my first one first,
okay.
Austin.
Okay.
Kinlaw dominated the Senior Bowl, and then mysteriously he had knee tendonitis, which was his agent saying okay, you've done enough, you're done.
Okay, Mike, my second pick was not so heralded.
Tell him,
because CeeDee Lamb had been picked up by Dallas. I went with Trevon Diggs.
Oh boy.
Yep. And that's all you need to hear right there, everybody.
Hey, speaking of oh boy, do you remember back to 2010, a young man out of Murray State who could rush the passer a little bit, and what kind of grade and where you put him on your board, named Austin Lane?
I had great character, great intangibles.
Enough said, Brent. And that's all I need to hear. Hey, my mom is super proud of me right now, man. I appreciate it, Mike. Great
all right,
character.
Mike, last one for you. Trevor Lawrence fever down here. They just did season ticket renewals. They're going fast. People have a buzz. Meyer, Trevor Lawrence, we know they're taking them. If you were the GM of the Jags, how just over the moon would you be about the idea of taking Trevor Lawrence, that he lands kind of in your lap with the number 1 overall pick? Give us a thought or two from that perspective on Trevor Lawrence.
I just think he's going to be really special because he checks all the boxes: character, talent, ability, leadership. I think he's going to be really, really special. I think they're really lucky to get him, and I think he's somewhere between Vinny Testaverde and Andrew Luck, and I think he has high ceiling, high character, and I can't wait to watch him in the NFL.
Awesome stuff, Mike Tannenbaum. We appreciate the time and like following you on Twitter as well. Keep putting out the good information, and hopefully you can join the show once again down the road.
All right, thanks so much for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.